Hello, sweet friends. Today we are going to make a charm pack table runner. And this charm pack is called Parade on Main by Riley Blake Design. This is a little older pack, so you may not be able to find this exact pack, but I have a limited quantity of these in my shop, and so you can find that at www.thequilterscandyshop.com. And this is called Parade on Main Charm Squares. And then you will also need a 1/4 yard straight cut of a light background. And I have this cute one with little sprinkles, also from Riley Blake, and it works perfectly with this. So I designed a really fast and fun table runner for 4th of July, and so I'm going to show you that pattern today. Now, I designed this based around the quantities that were in this pack, which it has 12 red squares, 6 prints. It has 8 navy squares, 4 prints. It has 6 colors of light blue. Well, there'd be 12 squares. And then there are 5 white. So that's what you need if you want to make this exactly. You can cut from your stash. You can open up a charm pack from somebody else and just manipulate it, and then whatever's missing, add. If you don't have enough light blue, find a scrappy light blue and throw it in, because this is a little bit scrappy, so you can just mix and match with what you've got. Okay, I'm going to set these aside, and we're going to start with the reds. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to cut this pack in half. I just realized these are going to go, they're going to go in strips like this, and I want those stripes to be strippy, so I'm going to turn this. If you've got something that's directional, you'll want to cut it across this way so the up and down goes like that. So there's 2.5, and I don't think any of these are directional, but just in case. And 2.5. Like that. Perfect. And after you've got your squares cut in half, then you're going to make it 4.5 by 2.5. So this on here, 4.5. You're going to cut off 1/2 inch. And there you go. Now you're going to take these and lay them out in 4 strips. So you're going to make 4 rows, and each row is going to have one of each of the prints in it. And you can lay these out random like this, or you can put it in some order. Now, random sort of hurts my brain a little bit, so I'm gonna try doing it with a little bit of cohesiveness. I think that's the word I would like to use today. So here we go. We're getting this together now. All right, when I get this done, I will bring it back to you. Okay, and now that we've got this all laid out, I'm just going to sew all of these together end to end and make 4 strips that is 2.5 inch wide by the 6 pieces. So there's my first row. It's super fast. So I did not take the time to press my seam allowances in between. I just waited till I got the whole strip done and then pressed them all one direction. And in this case, I would recommend pressing them all towards the inside, and all of them could be the same because we're not going to match these up. They don't have to nest, and that will make it easier for sewing. So these are going to go like this, and now we're going to add our background fabric in the center right here. We're going to cut 3 2.5-inch strips from our whatever background you chose. I think this one is really darling. Even though it's like candy sprinkles, it really almost looks like sparklers, little sparkles in the sky. So that's what I'm using for this. I'm going to be super dangerous. I'm going to cut with my thing right there. So I just have a 12.5-inch square because it gives me the full length, and another ruler for the 2-ruler method to make sure I'm being safe and not crossing over the top of myself to cut. It just makes everything more accurate. So if you use a larger ruler so that you can go right on this edge and you've got a long line to measure on instead of a short line, it's too easy with short rulers to get these cattywampus. So the 2-ruler method is awesome. But this one on this long line, now you know this is perfectly square, but you don't want to cross over the top yourself, so you put another smaller ruler here that you can get a good grip and it won't move. Slide that away. And now you're making a really good and safe cut and nothing moved. So now I can move this out of the way and I can use this to make 2.5-inch strips. And now I can measure from the left because I am right-handed. That is going to be the most accurate. All right, so we only need 3 strips. There's 1, 2, 3, 2.5-inch strips. And this little cutie is going to go in my scrap bin. Okay, with our background strips here, we're just going to start at the bottom, flip this over, and sew a scant 1/4-inch seam allowance along this bottom edge. And now that your seam allowances are all pressed this way, you'll be able to sew right over the top. All right, I'm going to do that with all 3 of these strips, like this. And then I'll be right back. All right, now that I have those sewn together, I'm going to sew these 2 together. Same thing, scant 1/4-inch. And then I'll sew these 2 together along here. When I have those done, I'm going to go ahead and sew these 2 units together, and we'll have our center section of our table runner. All right, here it is, our center section. And we'll just set this aside for now, and we'll go on to the buffalo check plaid on the end. The rest of this all has to be quartered into 2.5-inch squares, and boom, there it is. So the second half of this is to make 2 really cute buffalo check ends, and they'll go on 1 each on either end of our stripes. And to do that, you're going to do a navy and a light blue, and of course you want to mix these up a bit. I'm just going to roughly lay them out to start, and then there's the light. So that's basically what we've got going on. So you'll have a navy. There's twice as many light blues as there are navies, so you should be able to lay these out pretty easily like this. And so you have a navy and a light blue and a navy, light blue, navy, light blue, navy, light blue, one more, and navy. This is going to get across the top. You're going to get a navy, light blue, navy, light blue, navy, and navy. Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now once you have that kind of set up, you can just start filling in. Just remember, you're going to make 2 of these, and you had 2 of this fabric squares which you made into quarters. So you have, if you want them to be the same, you have 4 of each print to use. So that might help you divide out. So I'm going to find my other 4 firecrackers, and I'm going to set those aside for the other half. If I'd have been smart, I would have separated these into 2 pairs. So your layout here is 7 across and 7 down. Your top row is going to be a navy, light blue, navy, light blue, navy, light blue, navy. And your second row is going to be a light blue, white, light blue, white, light blue, white, light blue. And then those 2 rows duplicate navy, light blue, and light blue, white. And it doesn't look like much now because it's laying on top of this pink board. But once this is all sewn together, you're going to see a little buffalo check or gingham style come together. Well, let's get this sewn together. I'm going to sew these pairs, and then I'm going to put these 2 together and add this one on here, and then I'm going to put the 2 sets together, and I'll come back and bring this row. I've done 2 rows. Now, this is all very similar. It's super easy to get these all put in the wrong place. So make a couple trips back to make sure everything's lined up. But now I want to sew these 2 together so you can start to see the pattern. I really want to see the pattern myself. So I'm going to sew this together and I will come right back. Also, this row I have my seam allowance going this way. This row I have my seam allowance going this way. So they will nest and I will have perfect intersections. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, here's the first little section. So you can see this row is all blue and light blue, and this row is all light blue and white. And when you get this all together, this is going to look like the blue field on a flag, and then you're going to have these whites that are going to stand out, and those will be representing the stars. So I think that's going to be really cute. I'm going to put the rest of this together and I'll show it to you, and then I'll have one more to do, and then we'll put this puppy together. All right, y'all, here it is, our little buffalo check end piece to our stripes. So this is going to go down here, and this is going to go here. Now, when I pressed these, I kind of went against normal convention and I pressed to the light. And that is because the light is a single piece and this has seam allowance, and it just naturally wants to go that way. So I just went with it. You can do it the other way if you want. Just keep in mind when you go to press these, you want to make these rows the opposite. So these whites press in. So these rows, they have to press out. This lights have to press out, okay? So that way they will nest together. So this will go here and flip. And then we'll sew that down there. Ooh, I could do a bit more pressing, looks like. And I also have to make another one of these, which is going to go on this end. We have a big family, and we have big family 4th of July, so we have a long table that puts a lot of people. This is going to be like a 4-foot table runner. If you don't want a 4-foot table runner, if your table's smaller, you could stop right here and just have the blue buffalo check with the patchy stripes only and not have the second half of the patchy stripes. All right, well, I'm going to get mine put together. You get yours put together, and then we'll finish this off with some top stitch quilting. The rough size of this runner is 14.5 wide and 52 inches long. So that means you're not going to be able to get your backing out of one with the fabric. So if you want a single piece of fabric, then you will have to run your fabric long ways, and that would mean you would need to have 1 2/3 yards, so you have plenty of extra along the outside edge for the quilting. I am not opposed to a seam on the back, so to save myself some money, I am going to buy 2 half-yard cuts and sew them together, and that'll be plenty long. So I'm going to piece my backing, and the fabric I'm going to be using is this cute little floral. I think it's just adorable. Looks like a little firecracker floral. All right, so I've put my 2 pieces together, put a center seam, cut off the selvage, pressed it open, so the backing is ready. Just a side note, I noticed at the last second that this is a directional print, and so these flowers all have to go one way, and so just make sure both pieces that you're putting together are going the same direction. So that is face side down, and then what I've done is I pulled just a scrap piece of batting from the last quilt that I had quilted, and it was the perfect size. Yay, so I did not have to buy any extra batting. That's always good. I always keep my scrap batting, and in fact, if I didn't have one that was big enough, I would have just Frankensteined some batting together, because this is a table runner. This is not going to be someone's heirloom table runner. This is going to be just, party table runner. So yeah, it doesn't matter. You can just Frankenstein some of those pieces together and really use up those batting scraps. All right, so once you get this all patted into place, pin it really good so it won't move around on you. I'm going to break out my pin koala bear, and I'm just going to start pinning. This is my center, so I want to get that for sure. I'm just going to pin randomly. I'm going to get this center really good. Make sure you're getting that bottom fabric. And you can use straight pins like I'm doing. I have some quilters quilting basting pins somewhere, but as some of you already know, I just moved to Texas, and so much of my quilting supplies are still packed away that I can't find anything. So that's my excuse. I'm sticking with it. So today we're going to use these pins, these big head and long pins, and it works just great. So whatever you have. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get this whole thing pinned, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do to quilt it. I'm just going to carefully pull this. I've got it pinned clear down to the end, and I want to just cut off some of this. So you can do this with a ruler, and it can just be a rough cut, or you can do it with a pair of scissors. It doesn't really matter, but I would leave myself a good 2 inches on there. And this fabric is actually bigger than my mat, so I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and cut it with scissors, because it doesn't have to be perfect. This is all going to get trimmed off, so it just has to go across like that. I'll save all that. Who knows? That might be a really cute bag by the end of this week. Carefully pull this end down and do the same thing. I just want to leave myself plenty of room to hold on to, come off the edge. If anything should grow, I've got enough stuff. All right. Look at that. Won't that make a cute little purse? Yep, that's going to happen. My long arm is also packed away. So I am just going to quilt this on my sewing machine. And all I'm going to do for that is I'm going to go down both sides of the plaid. And that's going to be plenty of quilting for the plaid. And I think for the stripe, I think I'm going to do the same thing. Go down both sides of the long. So I'm going to take this to my machine and do a little stitching and show you what that might look like. I'm going to do this little plaid section first, and so to prepare for that, I am just going to roll up this end with the pins to the inside. That way the top's not getting as distorted, and it's going to make it easier for me to go back and forth if I've got some sort of control on this edge right here. And I'm going to put this through my machine like this. Be very careful because those pins are in there. They're very sharp, so careful where you grab things. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sew straight down here. Then I have a solid line that I can pat out and away from. Now, I am no expert. In fact, I don't know anything about how to quilt by machine. I've done a few things, not that much, but that just means to say that if I can do it, you can do it. So here we go. I'm going to use this inside mark on my foot as my guide, and that's how I'm just going to sew all of them with that same distance right there. So whatever that is going to be perfectly good. I'm going to always start with the back stitch. You want that to look nice and flat. And here I'm coming up on my pin. So I should have brought my koala bear over to put those pins back in. My husband calls that my koala bear voodoo doll. I'm going to do all of these short back and forth lines before I try to do this inside where it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So, and I'm just going to catch the edge of this to hold it in place and come over here, leave my needle down and turn the fabric. Needle down, press your foot up, turn the fabric, get it lined up where you want it, make sure it's all nice and flat, and then sew. So I come down here again, and this is going to be it. This is all I'm going to do is go back and forth on this. So let me get a bunch of this done, and when I get to the end, I'll show you what this looks like. Okay, I've taken a little break here from quilting because, one, I want to show you what I decided to do on the stripes. I just went down 2 sides of this seam. I'm not going to do any cross. I looked at the back, and everything's flat, and I think it's close enough. I think it's going to be good. I don't think we have to do more than that. You are certainly welcome to do whatever you feel you want to do in your quilting in here. But the other reason I wanted to stop so I could show you is when I got to this point, I pulled this up, and because this had been rolled and rolled and rolled, and to turn around and around to quilt this. This was a little out of whack, even with the pins. So I unpinned it, and I actually flipped the whole thing over and really got a good smoothing out on this back side, because even though it had pins, it was still, you know, where it was supposed to be. With a little bit of growth and pushing and pulling, it was a little bit bumpy. So I'm really glad I did that. I got this pulled out nice and flat again, repinned, and now I can finish quilting the same way on here as I did for this part. And then all we have to do is trim it and bind it, and we're going to be done. I'm going to get to work on this, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, my sweet friends, here we go. The final little bit here is trimming up this table runner. I get out as many rulers as I need to make it easy for me, which generally means a large square, and in the case of a full-size quilt, I might get 2 or 3 of these 24-inch rulers. As many rulers as it takes to get a basic corner set, and then I work down one side and down the other. Just making sure I've got everything on the cutting mat. Then you just hold this down and cut. And don't do this. Don't do this what I'm doing. Move around and get the right cut. But here I'm trying to do this inside the camera, so that's my excuse, and I'm sticking with it. Okay, so here we go. Down, and this will go off now. Okay, so there we go. So look how great this is going to look once it's trimmed. And so I'll finish trimming this, and then we will talk binding. Okay, you basically need 4 strips of 2.5-inch wide for your binding. It comes out to like 138 inches all the way around, something like that. And yours may come out a little bigger or a little smaller, and that's great. So I really only needed 3 1/3 strips, but since I can't cut 1/3 of a strip, I have to cut 4 strips. I like my binding 2.5 inches wide. Sometimes I make it 2 1/4. I probably could do this here, but I'm just going to go with 2.5. It's the general, it's the most general size people use. Okay, and then I'm going to take these to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew these end to end. I don't do the diagonal seam on the joining of the strips. I just use a straight seam. I trim the seam allowance, and then I press it open. And that has always worked fine for me, but you do whatever works good for you. So I'm going to put these together and press it in half. If you would like a binding tutorial, I know there's plenty of them on there, but sometimes just hearing it at the right time, at the right space, and whatever, put a comment below if you would like a little binding tutorial. But anyway, I'm going to get this done, and then we will sew it on, and let's see how this turns out. Okay, here's my binding, and I processed it, and basically, as I explained, I just did a straight joint, sewed it together, trimmed the seam allowance, and then I pressed it open, and then I went through and folded it in half and pressed it in half. So that's all I've done, and I have all 4 of my strips on here, even though I need 3 1/3 strips. I have all 4 here, and then when I get done, I'll trim off the extra. Now I am going to do this machine because I'm trying to do this fast and easy for a table runner. To do a machine finish, I like to sew the binding on by machine on the back, and it's probably I call it a 1/4 inch, but it's really probably more 3/8 of an inch. I just make a little wider seam and go all the way around, and then when it's done, I'll press it over. After that, I go and finish it on machine on the front. So I'll show you what that looks like when I get there. So I'm going to put my binding on and bring this back. And here my binding is finished. I did a machine on the back, and then I press it over because I want that to be a nice clean line. Then when it comes to the front, I just fold it over as I stitch. And look at this line right here. It just looks so clean and professional, and I love it. Now, there's lots of people who like to hand finish, and that is beautiful. But I make so many quilts, I don't have time for that. So with a little bit of practice, I have got this down, and I think it looks great. And nobody's complained for anyone that I've given a quilt to. So I hope you give machine finish a try. And there's so many ways to do binding. Do the one that works best for you. There's no laws when it comes to quilting. Now, I only have a couple of these 5-inch stacker packs available because it's a little older group, so I only have a few of these left. But if you wanted to find these, they were on our website. It's called Parade on Main, and it's at www.thequilterscandyshop.com. That's SHOPPE shop.com. You can pick up one of these and you can make this really cute table runner. And if not that, you can also find yourself a jelly roll. This will work perfectly good with jelly rolls. If you find a 10-inch square pack that works, you can just cut those into quarters. So it's really versatile pattern. You can use just about anything. Okay, well that's it. There is our table runner ready to go for our next barbecue. Now you take this idea and run with it and go make yourself something sweet.